What's up, guys? It is Ben with Ben's Election Predictions, the most accurate election predictor for the 2020 presidential elections. Today, I'm going to dive into the polls, um, just the polling industry in general, because I think what we've seen, especially in the past 5 years, is that the polls are not always right. So why do we even look at them? And I think one kind of interesting historical fact. You might get this in trivia, but everyone thought that Thomas Dewey was going to beat Harry Truman. It was all in the polls. Every single poll had him up by double digits. So this was kind of the first main example in history. This happened in the 1948 election. But you would think with all this time, with all these advances in science and with the internet, and as these things get more precise, people are easier to contact and communicate with polls. We're able to study human behavior better, that we would improve on this. But I think one lesson we've learned, especially from 2016 and even 2020, is that we haven't. We still have had instances, and I'll even pull up the Wikipedia page. I mean, this is a very famous photo of President Truman with the newspaper article, but so some similar instances, I would say, in the 1960 race, this was a very close race too, and what happens is these media organizations try to jump the gun and try to get it right. And in the 2000 presidential election, I mean, it was egregious. I mean, you had networks going flip flopping back and forth, and they frankly didn't know um, who was going to win, and they got it wrong. They try to jump the gun. I mean, there's only two outcomes: either candidate X or candidate Y will win, but they ended up getting it wrong. In 2016, everyone, literally everyone, Nate Silver, most people predicted. I mean, everyone thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win, but what the journalists, what part of their responsibility is to not um, report on things that haven't happened or to try to predict the future. They're only supposed to report on things and publish things that are accurate. So this Madam President that the Newsweek did, that this was hugely criticized as these journalists were trying to jump the gun and report on things that didn't happen. And then we have some kind of lesser important cases in 2018, 2017. But I want to kind of look back at the 2016 election. So I mean, Nate Silver with this 538 model. I mean, this was kind of I would say by the media and by other political scientists, Nate Silver's model is seen as the gold standard. But I mean, if we look here, I mean, he got 5 states wrong, and by pretty considerable margins. I mean, even if we look at a state that he did get right, the projected share at the end of the day was 2 points in Trump's favor, and it ended up being 8 points. Or if we look at a state like Wisconsin, which went to Trump by a little less than a point, it had Clinton +5. So we really only hear about these egregious polling errors when it affects the outcome of a race. But one thing that I wanted to kind of emphasize here is that these happen a lot. Instead of kind of being a bug in the system, or as instead of being kind of an anomaly that doesn't happen very often, that they have really become something that happens every election cycle. The one race that 530 actually did get right was the 2018 midterms when Trump wasn't on the ballot. I mean, they actually got it very close. So they projected that the Democrats would gain 39 seats. They ended up gaining 40 at the end of the day. And in the Senate, the Republicans ended up gaining 2 seats, and they projected a .5 Republican seat, which obviously isn't possible, but it was well within their range of possibilities. And in the 2020 election, I thought it was very interesting how Nate Silver in 538 didn't do a map like this, which I think is easier to toggle. You can click on each of the states and you can kind of get an idea of like the 538 map that most people use, but they didn't want to use it to emphasize that it's still very possible for example, for Trump to win a state like Minnesota, or for Biden to win Alaska, or for Biden to even win like Tennessee, which obviously um, is not possible. But the one reason why I want to look at this, like while 538 kind of gave themselves some outs, I think what we saw here is that they were actually very wrong again. So while they did predict a Biden victory correctly, I mean that wasn't that hard to do. I mean I even did that, but I think at the end of the day, if we really look at it, Trump had a higher chance than a 10% chance to win. And I think predict it was actually more accurate with between a 30 and 35% chance. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, Biden won the election 100%. But I think because of all the polling errors we saw, especially in the Rust Belt, like we did in 2016, the pollsters didn't really learn their lesson. But we see here that they got North Carolina and Florida wrong. So okay, we can say technically they only got two states wrong. But if we look at a state like Wisconsin, I mean, they thought so. Like in 2016, Hillary Clinton was projected to win by what 5 points. They projected Biden to win by 8 points, and he won by less than a percentage point. So I don't think a lot of people focus on this because it didn't affect the outcome of the race. But this still is a distinct polling error. Um, and so one thing that I also think is pretty interesting is so looking at the predicted map. So I mean, predicted map is literally just based on the market, on people buying and selling shares for who they think is going to win. It's not based on the polls. I mean, people make their opinions maybe partially based on the polls, but on a host of other different reasons. And I think that the predicted map was far better than any of kind of the 538 or the Economist, or I'm trying to think of some other models that vastly overestimated Biden. So I think that we would say that the predicted. I mean, while many people say because it's more male, there's more male traders on predicted that it might lean a little bit more Republican, and there might be more emotional traders on the Trump side. That being said, I think the predicted model at the end of the day ended up being more accurate than anyone else, just because it made it seem close. So I just played it here. So at first, starting out in June and July, this was after all of the George Floyd stuff. They projected that the Democrats, I mean Biden wasn't officially the nominee yet, would get 334 votes and win Florida and North Carolina. Um, However, we know that wasn't the case. But I mean, the predict it was just following what the pollster said. But I think that the reason why they were more accurate is because they remembered what happened in 2016. And I think after 2018, like in the maybe the pollsters thought they were going to be more right, but that couldn't be more wrong. And I mean, there was more people that were saying that option could happen, but it didn't translate into their models. Because I mean, with the 538 model, you simply just enter in data and you it spits a result out. So as we're getting close to election day, I mean, Trump did improve. I think he was in his worst when he was over the summer. I mean, COVID was raging, all the George Floyd stuff. He wasn't in a great place. So we can see that he's improving some as the election cycle goes on. And the closest states come election day, we can see that we're about 1 month out here. We're North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Arizona. These are the only states that were kind of in the tilt. So no one really knew above, or they were all priced under 60%. So which means that they were pretty unsure. and so we can speed up. We can see that. I mean, North Carolina's flipping back and forth every day. Florida, on the other hand, turned a little bit more red, and I think this was because of some of the early voting indicators. But we can see at the end of the day they were fairly accurate. And I mean, even though in this kind of last model, I mean, if we even go like a couple of days beforehand, we can see that this was exactly what I said, and I was wrong. I got North Carolina and Georgia wrong, 2 states wrong. They only got 2 states wrong as well. Um, and I would say what they got wrong for the most part was Georgia. Um, just because this was I guess they consider it a lean state, even though it went to the Democrats. And then so also to compare to maybe it's kind of the biggest election predictions on YouTube. So this was Let's Talk Elections. This was their one of their last electoral predictions. And they predicted Florida to go blue. I think actually in one closer to the elections, he predicted that Georgia would actually go blue too. So I mean, Let's Talk Elections was not right either. He overestimated Biden, and then I mean, this isn't surprising to me, but if we look back to see what Red Eagle said, um, he overestimated Trump and said that he would win Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona. So at the end of the day, to come to my conclusion of this video, what my main point is that the polls aren't right. So even though over time, in theory, I mean, people's opinions about like polling and races should have gotten better as technology has improved. People have learned better techniques, random sampling. You can internet polls, phone call polls instead of just bring people out of the fields. We still haven't perfected it, and I think that the political election prediction, like someone like myself and Red Eagle and Let's Talk Elections and many other people who have Twitter accounts and podcasts. I only think this industry is going to improve because no one can be perfect. I think that's why we have a prediction market that predicts these elections, because at the end of the day, people don't know. These polls are not accurate. And one kind of thing that I said it's kind of funny is like, have you ever gotten called for a poll? I've personally never gotten called for a poll. So I'm like, how accurate can they be? Because they can't account for what my opinion is. They aren't asking me how I vote. So they have no idea. They don't know whether I'm going to turn out or not. And people can build models, but these models aren't imperfect. So I think that as we report on the Virginia election, I think it's not necessarily smart to obsess over individual polls, like Monmouth predicted a tie. I mean, if we even look for the California recall, I mean, you had polls where to recall was ahead of keeping Gavin Newsom, and at the end of the day it was a 20 plus point route for Gavin Newsom. So I think that, and I mean, polls started to kind of model that more accurately towards the end, but it took some time. So um, first of all, I mean, polls taken out in September and November aren't going to, or in September and August aren't going to be accurate. But I mean, even polls that are just taken from this past week aren't going to be accurate. So I think that's important to note. And please let me know your opinions on this. Do you think people are going to know it better? I frankly think that it could get worse. I know Trump was a little bit of an anomaly, and so as he exits the political picture, maybe polls will become more accurate. I'm a little skeptical. Let me know what you think in the comments, and let me know what type of videos that you want in the future. Thanks, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.